Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome, everybody, to the American Made and Paid Show. Zach here, got Professor Dreg with me, and in 2020 fashion, we got to talk a little bit about the presidential debate. So I did sit through most of the NBC coverage of the Democrat presidential debates from a couple of nights ago. I believe there were 2 nights of it so far, from what I can tell. And the big thing is a couple of things. You know, I obviously want to talk a little bit about Andrew Yang. The guy didn't get much of a chance to say very much. I mean, we can address that a little bit, but mainly what happened last night during the Democrat debates with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris, as all of you probably know, with my background and Professor Dreg's, hails from Oakland, California, my hood.
Yeah, it's crazy.
She I don't know. She's not really from there. She's from San Francisco, and
yeah. Well, I mean,
part of the whole crowd with Willie Brown.
She grew up in Oakland or went to
I know
school
she
in
did.
Berkeley or something like that. That's what she said yesterday.
I know, and I'm not gonna stay here and have people talk about where they're from or anything. But let's talk a little bit about Kamala Harris. I mean, what were your thoughts that you wanted to bring into this, and then we'll kind of piggyback.
Okay, well,
presidential debates.
I want to get into because she brought up what happened to. Well, let me start off by saying me and Kamala Harris are about the same age. So when she was a senior in high school, I was a freshman in high school. We didn't go to school together, but we were both in the Bay at the same time.
Right. Oh yeah, she is born in Oakland. Huh? What the hell?
So
yeah, that's true.
So I know what she's talking about. And we spoke about this before about forced quote unquote busing. So she totally calls out Joe Biden on what we've been speaking about.
Right.
About
when he voted for the segregate with the buses, right? Busing kids to schools and stuff.
Yeah,
we talked about that during our critique with Joe Biden and Simone Sanders a few weeks ago.
But it goes back deeply into what what I've been saying was that MLK Jr., his whole legacy is a hoax.
Yeah.
Because what Kamala Harris was talking about, she said something very actually accurate. And she said that Joe Biden was against and was voting for policies that undid the Oliver Brown versus the Board of Education Topeka, Kansas case law. And the thing is, she was dishonest about that when she said that. The whole thing, busing wasn't the answer or the solution to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And we spoke about this, but specifically in 1964, it's called, in 1964, Martin Luther King, he literally backed, and he was there when LBJ signed. He was the only black man there.
Right.
And realistically, the only time Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. met was to speak about that. And Malcolm X actually was opposed to the Civil Rights Act of 64, and MLK Jr. was actually for it. So anyway, long story short, Title IV specifically talks about desegregation of public education. So the listeners should just go ahead and read it for themselves. But basically, it's under Public Law 88-352, if you really want to find it. And don't go on Wikipedia and type Civil Rights Act of 1964 because you're not going to see it. You got to read the actual law, which is called Public Law 88-352.
I remember when we first, many months ago, when you first opened my eyes to the differences between the 57 and the 64 Civil Rights Act. And I actually went and looked up the actual law because you can access this. This is all public information.
Yeah, it's public record.
It's like 100 pages long, right? And there's just that one clause that we read in, I think, the first article at the very end about segregation of public schools, right? Which is the implicit racism. Because here's the thing. If the Civil Rights Act of 64 was explicit racism, nobody would push it, right? But LBJ was smart. Democrats are smart. Progressives know how to manipulate the language, which is what we've been talking about, to get people to be all for it, right? And then that's the thing is, you were right when I read it. And I was like, wow, they added that. They added a literacy test. They added, and it actually slowed down the development of people who were impacted disparately due to segregation laws.
But the most amazing thing to me about all of this is they used a Christian pastor to get it passed. And that was the most amazing, like for me personally, it just amazes me.
Pure manipulation.
Yeah, no, but it's insane. But the thing is, the reason why it was allowed to continue was because of the leadership. Now, who were the leaderships of this time? And you hate to say things like this. Well, no, it's the Jews. Like the Jewish people were financing many of the quote unquote Republicans of that time.
Explain. Who exactly?
Okay, so lobbyists didn't just become like, it wasn't like
I mean, if you're talking about people like Barry Goldwater, is he even Jewish? I don't even.
Well, see, but this is the thing. It's yeah, I know, but because
right, yeah, see now because you think for a second, like, wait a minute.
because you hate to.
And by the way, he is Jewish.
Yeah, no, of course he's Goldwater. Come on. No, but no, because I was like really obvious, and I don't want to really go that route.
Yeah, I know.
Because again, like I said, it took a Christian pastor, Martin Luther King Jr., to get it passed and get everybody to go along with it. But you have to look at what was and who were the money behind it. The money behind all of this, behind MLK Jr. was actually Jewish people. And which is amazing because at this instance, I'd have to say, the Muslims are actually correct on this versus,
Well, what did the Muslims say exactly? Because this is
they were against it. Because remember, in the 60s, the Muslims were black in this country. There were no white Muslims in this country. All the white Muslims actually lived in the Middle East, and they had an idea to infiltrate the United States. How are they going to infiltrate the United States? Well, they went into the prisons and converted not all the blacks, but many blacks in prisons, and they made them become great leaders when they left prison. So when Malcolm X left prison, he was a great leader. All these people, because they were articulate, they got an education in prison. So, Malcolm X was actually against a lot of these things that MLK Jr. was pushing. But because he's Christian, everybody believed him. But it wasn't true Christianity. It was, he was financed by a bunch of Jewish people, and from the left. Because remember, a lot of Jewish people from New York or wherever, I don't know why, but these Jewish people are like the Woody Allens of the world. I don't understand why they are the way they are, but it's just how they are. They're extremely racist. And to this day, Jewish people do not understand what civil rights are. And I'll use Ben Shapiro as an example.
This ought to be good.
Because he's a proud Jewish guy and he's conservative. But because of his faith and his religion, he'll never understand why the 1964 Civil Rights Act is a bad bill. He won't, and he'll still advocate it to this day. If you listen to him, he'll say, "Oh yeah, forced busing was bad."
But see that makes perfect sense though, because when we think about the '64 Civil Rights Bill, right, it was an act pushed by Democrats. Conservatives use the figment of Martin Luther King as being the
Yeah,
champion
because
of
he was
that.
a Christian.
Right, because he was a Christian. But here's where it's interesting is because all somebody who on the surface level, right? We're not talking about the deep stuff here, but if you were to talk to anybody who's mildly interested in politics, all they would have to say is, well, the '64 Civil Rights Act was sanctioned by Democrats and passed to desegregate, schools and stuff and end the Jim Crow laws. And it's like, well, that happened. Republicans did it first in 1957 with Eisenhower.
Well, that's exactly. So, and here's where Ben Shapiro's flawed. He believes that not the entire country was a Jim Crow country. He believes it's only the South was Jim Crow. But that's not true. Boston, the North was very racist. And to this day, if it's a progressive city, it's very racist.
It's the same history here that people need to understand. We've talked about this. I think we should revisit it because it's all very relevant to current presidential.
Because Kamala Harris brought it up.
Yeah. But like, for example, there's like people need to forget this whole notion of the North and the South, segregation, non-segregation, slavery, no slavery. Because here's the thing. You had Northern and Southern Democrats even during the Civil War areas. You had, progressive run, Democrat-run cities in the North that were still sanctioning these things. So when people talk about, oh, well, there was no slavery in the North, there was no discrimination in the North, there was, but under Democrats, because back during the Civil War areas, there were Northern and Southern Democrats. That's how it works. And that's why people are always confused. Like, why was Boston all racist? I'm like, because they're Democrats in Boston.
Yeah, progressives. No, but specifically, they were progressives, and progressives are all atheists who believe in Charles Darwin. Because this is the thing.
I know, Darwin,
Sanger,
saying
this,
yeah.
because people forget progressives are atheists who believe in Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin gave progressives the right, through science, to become their own gods. Just like how the progressives believe science is somehow, some way telling them that climate change.
The way they can get themselves, the way that they are able to remove religion so quickly and rapidly in literally just 150 years, right? This is the thing, because like religion as we know it with our beliefs in God have been around for thousands of years until just very recently. Like you could say that the whole world was, to some degree, you had a faith, but
yeah,
what and I will get back to our point here, but what progressivism created was, because we had so-called validity in science, the way they could manipulate it, right? When you say, well, we evolved from monkeys and this is evolution and all that kind of stuff, it automatically makes regular everyday people question the validity and the integrity of the Bible, because they think, oh, well, it's an archaic document. And I want to say this very, very clearly for our listeners, because the way people look at the Bible and say, well, Charles Darwin talked about the theory of evolution from observing, turtles on the Galapagos Islands, right? The way progressives look at, the way atheists and the way scientists look at evolution as being the standard of what we believe in and know God is the same way progressives look at the Constitution, looking at it as an archaic document where, because it was written in 1790, it must not be good because they didn't know it. But here's the thing. When you really read it, it still protects your rights to this day, regardless of what has changed. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing with, but see, people use the time aspect here is the important thing that people need to understand, because this is a very recent phenomenon. This is only of the last 150 years, right? Where people stopped believing in the Constitution. Around the same time, they started removing the whole under God Christian nation, slowly but surely in the late 19th and 20th centuries.
So it's actually 100 years, 107, about 107 years that progressive ideology took place. But I want to go back to what you said, because this is like, I don't want people to gloss over this. The idea that we come from monkeys is incredibly like damaging, and for lack of a better word, is just pure evil. Because again, that type of mentality and that type of sloppy science and geez, just the math behind
How do you even have, there's no scientific method behind that even. And I'm not even a scientist.
Well, I mean, I get it. Like, I understand, because there was this one scientist really prominent in his day. He used to believe that flies came from garbage. Like, like our waste would produce flies. Like, that's how flies came, was from our garbage cans, because he never noticed there was maggots in there. And he didn't know that maggots turn into flies. And this dude was a real scientist. And, but anyway, but the thing is like this, that type of sloppy thinking just led to what we see when it comes to the EPA or the California Air Resources Board doing what they do, or agencies like this. They probably have this all around the world.
That makes perfect sense, because like you said, sloppy science means you can justify anything. It's like, oh, we came from monkeys, so the sky must be falling because we're polluting it. Like,
no, but exactly. And that's the thing. Instead of using real science to come up with the real, because look, pollution's bad. Everybody knows it. But it doesn't mean the world is going to blow up in 12 years. All they're doing is, and every single person, and I'm sure this happens in like Germany, England, Australia, everywhere. All of these people who think like this believe that they are somehow better than everybody else because they are gods themselves. And because they understand things that we're too stupid to understand, they have every right to control us. And that's the scary thought. Like, that's why I don't want to gloss over that. Because if you honestly believe we come from monkeys, that type of mentality is very wrong. And it's just straight evil. And the Bible's very clear on how evolution works.
Let me, well, it or doesn't work. But let me ask you an obvious question here, which kind of poses a rhetorical question to the audience that's listening. Think about that statement, right? Because I love dissecting language, and this is where I would like to think the original thought comes from. When they say we evolved from monkeys, what does that tell you about the validity of human life? Therefore, it justifies carnal behavior. That means you can go screw animals, you can screw children, you can screw each other. Like, because of the fact that you came from monkeys and you are primal, right? Look at all of these practices outside of Christianity that talk about ways of behaving, right? Ways of becoming or whatever. It's always something around either sex, like lusting after certain behaviors, right? Because the justification here is we're animals.
Exactly.
That is what we're talking about here. And people need to understand that. When I say, why is it more damaging to think that, okay, not just because of the racism, because black people look closer to monkeys than we do. Let's just be honest, right? Yeah. Not just because of the social issues with that. But it reduces people to the point where it's like, well, if that's the case, then we might as well act out our animalistic behavior, therefore justifying anything. That's why Democrats can go up there and people like from NAMBLA can say, "Oh, well, I'm I was born this way. I'm going to be an advocate for pedophilia." And you see what I'm trying to say here?
Remember that saying I told you about a while ago? If it bleeds, it breeds. That's science. That's science. That's okay. She's 12 years old and she's on her period, so I could go ahead and have her. But that's what happens.
Yeah.
All of these people who believe and think that way, it's just an excuse to have their way because they see themselves as godlike people.
Correct.
And therefore,
and when godlike does not, I mean, I'm a Christian, I believe in God, but what I'm trying to say here is godlike, for the people who are listening, does not mean like God. It means going against what is natural, what is nature, which is the antithesis of conservatism. Because at the end of the day, to go back to the very first thing we ever talked about on this show, which is, I think we've defined conservatism more thoroughly than
I gotta cut you off and add to what you're saying, because it's more than just natural. It's the natural ethics set forth in the Bible.
Yeah.
Because if somebody heard what you said, they'd say, "Oh, well, see, if she's 13 and she's on her period, I can have sex with her because that's natural." No, natural ethics, natural morals. There is a natural order of morality set forth, and that's because I'm telling you now.
And
That's why.
and it comes from God. It cannot come from man because man is flawed. Yeah.
Exactly. See, and that's the specifics, because people, when they hear that, they don't understand what that means. It's the natural nature of morality set forth just for having a soul and a spirit. Because I'm telling you now, as much as we love our animals, dogs and cats, I mean, oh, they got a soul. They don't.
They don't.
They don't have a soul.
And we were granted specifically that we have a soul, but more importantly, it says this in Genesis 1. We were granted dominion over the animals. What I'm trying to say is it doesn't mean you have free reign and you can kill anything. What it means is you are more purposeful. God chose us as the centerpiece of all of his creation. We have a soul, which means if dogs go screwing other like cats and stuff, it doesn't mean humans can go about doing that. It ain't right.
Yeah.
So I know we kind of went on a bit of a tangent.
Dogs do that, right? Don't dogs sniff their ass and eat poop?
They do all kinds of things. They'll screw cats if they. Dogs. Okay, so here's the thing. I think that the aspect of when we domesticated dogs, I think we did a lot more than that. In that people now, because dogs are almost like a centerpiece of every family's life now for humans, because they're domesticated, right? But dogs, it's interesting because dogs represent all the stupid things that humans will do when you take God away from them. Think about it. Dogs are like, they're in our households, they're pets, all that kind of stuff. There's basically no wild dogs anymore. But when you look at how a dog behaves, just think about how the most well-behaved dog and the most problematic dog behaves. When you take God out of the equation, humans act just like that. I'm serious.
I know. I've seen it. Trust me.
Crapping on the streets, just kind of taking a dump on the pavement, screwing anything that moves.
No, but I told you we were called the plague dogs.
Butts. Like, you see what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Humans act like dogs when there's no God.
No, but we were proud to act like dogs. I'm not kidding. We were called the plague dogs. I'm not kidding. It was a group of like 4 or 5 of us, and we called ourselves the plague dogs.
The main thing is we're not animals here. That's the big thing that people need to understand. And I hope I'm driving this point home. But to take it back we have to get back to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I think that the very challenging of that, right, is something that needs to be discussed, because I think fundamentally it all comes down to, number one, there's an absence of standards. There's an absence of morality. And I think even just from a very basic standpoint, there's an absence of solution. Because during that debate, I didn't hear a single Andrew Yang, even though it's not a good solution, we all know the problems that we've already dissected it. He has solutions. They're just not the right solutions. But nobody else has that. Everybody's just talking about how bad things are. And I come from a sob story, and we got to help the immigrants and make sure that these people are getting health care. But no one has solutions. Not Andrew Yang, I hate to say this, but he's the only one who has a solution. You see what I mean? Even though it's not the right solution. So that's my commentary on it.
She has a lot of solutions, but she's misguided in many ways. But she's correct. The only thing I like about Tulsi Gabbard is she's anti-war, and
I do like that about her too.
And she doesn't want to continue just funding different countries for no reason.
Here's the interesting thing too. She's also I think not that she's the only one, but she, as of right now in the running for Democrats, she's the only veteran that's running. Right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, and I think you would understand this, but there's a difference when a veteran runs who is a Democrat versus a veteran.
Not a veteran. She's still serving.
Right, that's right. So there you go. So somebody who serves in the military, there's a difference between those people that go in and affiliate their political affiliation as Democrat versus Republicans. Because here's the flaw, right? A lot of military people who become politicians, who are any kind of military thing, they tend to be Republican. That's just the fact. They tend to be Republican. But the problem with that is most of them may not necessarily advocate for the ending of all wars. They'll say things like, well, we'll go in when it's necessary to defend. No, there's enough. So
thing. I don't understand what happened, dude. In the 50s, even in the 60s, no Republicans ever wanted war. They were like the anti-war party. We always ended the wars. We always pulled back. Democrats always
Lincoln
got
and
support.
Eisenhower, all these people, they didn't want it, right?
And now we're all about war.
Well, also think
doesn't
about
make
who
sense.
preside. Listen, also, this is not anything new. I think the reason why we have this, and this is my theory here, I could be completely wrong on this because my knowledge of U.S. foreign policy and wars is limited. I think it started with Bush. Because here's my theory. My theory is Reagan ended the Cold War.
Shit, you
right?
froze. Oh, man, I did not hear anything you said. You froze.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so because here's my theory. After the Civil War, right? The Civil War was Lincoln. Republican ended the war. World War I and World War II, two major armed conflicts run by progressive presidents. Woodrow Wilson, Franklin D. Roosevelt. There's no argument there, right? The people who have ended wars, like the Cold War, Ronald Reagan, and I think that the stigma of Republicans funding wars and being militarized and being like, the whole neocon thing where they like to go and take resources from other countries, that started with Bush. Bush made Republicans.
Yeah, but you know why though, right? Because he was the head of the CIA.
You see what yeah.
No, but that's just how it works. I mean,
right. So I think up until Reagan's point, I don't think I could be wrong on this. I'm going to say it right now so people can disagree with me. I think Republicans were not the warmongering like Republicans we know now. It happened with Bush. It happened with armed conflict and war on terror that started it all in the early 21st century. And that's how we have what we have. Because think about it, right? Prior to that, a lot of the armed conflicts and the world conflicts were not inflated to this degree, and they were not perpetuated by Republican presidents. In fact, they were ended by Republican presidents.
Yeah, that's pretty true. That's all pretty much true. Everything you said. But the scary thing is when you really look at history, you really have to understand the parents of the Bush, like the leaders, like who made the Kennedys, who made the Bush family. And, like I said before, they all went to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and they were all the same. They were all taught progressive ideology, and every single one of them had a God complex. And that's because, you can't break it down by like policies or party affiliation. You have to break it down to what did they really believe. It's a character flaw.
Yeah.
See, in the old days, it was like, okay, yeah, Republicans were more like anti-war. They were more Christian. And then, Democrats were, racist, but they were more open to weird stuff.
Yeah, civil rights, sexual liberation,
Yeah, but they weren't. Democrats were never open to civil rights. That's the whole thing. That's a myth. But they were always open to like weird stuff. Like, because like you look at the Kennedy family, and people, that's because they're Catholics. It's like, no, not because they were Catholic. It was they were into some weird stuff, just like sexual stuff, just a lot of weird sexual stuff. Because, everybody knows JFK was banging Marilyn Monroe, and she was not. I mean, even though she was a sex symbol of her time, but she was a well-known drug addict. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, who would, in their right mind, would bang a drug addict?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, who would do things like that? Well, like somebody who's morally depraved. And I know because I'm depraved myself. So, you know what I mean? It's like, and you take like, think about it. If you're willing to take a chance on a drug addict, and then imagine that guy running the country.
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
It's hard to find the right person. I mean, aside from Lincoln and George Washington and a few other.
But here's the point. The point is this. These are the people running our country who are ethically and morally depraved. And where does it come from? It came from their family, like in the quest for everlasting power for, God, I forget, I always want to say Joe Kennedy, but JFK, Bobby Kennedy, Ed Kennedy's dad. And same thing with the original Bush's father. I always get the numbers confused, but I think it's 41. Bush was president 41, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
40
so
Yeah,
41.
Bush Senior was 41.
Yeah. So 41's dad and JFK's dad were honest to God. What's that word? They weren't associates, and they had the same plans, and they were working together. You just don't become the director of the CIA from whatever. There's a lot of invisible strings being pulled in the background, and that only happens with people coming from Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. That's just a reality. And because those universities is like the hotbed for everything anti-Christian in this country and around the world, comes from Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Without a doubt, those universities teach against the moral teachings of the Bible, which is why so many Jews love going there. Why is it such a prestigious school? Why is it? Why do so many Jews like going there? Because it's anti-Christian. Everything that comes out of those universities are anti-Christian. And not that I don't trust people from Harvard, Princeton, and Yale, but all of my like spidey senses, for lack of a better word, are in high alert when I'm dealing with anybody and I'm talking anybody from around the world that comes from Harvard, Princeton, or Yale, because I know they are anti-Christian automatically. Even if they're Christian themselves, I already know they have a bastardization of some sort of Christian faith in their mind. And let's go back, and how do we tie this back to what happened between Biden and Kamala Harris? See, Biden had no responses to Kamala Harris other than, oh, that's not true, I fought for civil rights. And Kamala Harris, obviously being who she is, but because come on, I mean, I hate to attack her on her sexuality, but she's a Jezebel. She's just a Jezebel she's just like the grossest disease-infested Jezebel. I mean, I don't know if she has any diseases, but just trust me, she's a chicken.
Well, I mean, I believe you. I mean,
no, because she is, and everybody.
Willie Brown. I mean, after all that stuff, because stuff about Willie Brown that most people don't. After what you told me about Willie Brown, I don't need any other.
Yeah, no, trust me.
That guy is a sick human.
Yeah, no, but he was banging Kamala Harris when he was recruiting black people who he thought was smart, and yeah, it does not surprise me how he was banging Kamala Harris. I'm not because, like I said, we're about the same age, and I was young when I got into my positions. But unlike you, I had no moral compass. But I had enough sense to say "F you," and I ain't like that, and I'm gone. But anyway, which is really surprising because I really didn't know anything. Well, I had no respect for anybody back then, but it's neither here nor there. But going back to what she said, she totally bastardized everything, because here's the difference: in the 1950s, Oliver Brown, he was voluntarily wanted to go to a better school. Not every black person wanted to go to a good school. Many blacks wanted to stay in their all-black school, which is totally fine. But see, here's where the Jewish people get it wrong, like Ben Shapiro. And, people, oh, that's wrong, it's racist to go anti-Jew. It's like, no, it's not, because the Jewish people are the most powerful lobbyists. And yeah, I sound like to lead.
No, I will say that. I say that honestly, man. I've said this I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I've definitely told other people sort of in kind of closed spaces. And that's the thing, is that without a doubt, the Zionist agenda in this country is the most powerful lobby. Forget what you know about like charities or Republican, Democrat, or NRA or anything.
And it's not set out of hate.
I don't say this out of hate, but the Zionist agenda for Israel is the most powerful lobby in this country, and it's the one thing that makes the difference between a presidential candidate who is in and who is out. Forget everything else. The minute you mention you have any kind of stance where you're not a Zionist,
you want to know what's amazing?
They're out.
They were anti-Trump. They were anti-Trump.
Yeah.
They were anti-Trump because
Yeah, because their champion was okay. So, for example, I use the example of Mark Levin because Mark Levin endorsed Ted Cruz. He was not a Trumper, and I don't know if he is. Like, and then it's the same thing with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro's a never Trumper. He doesn't like Trump.
yeah.
And
Well, they like him now, but I still don't think they like him because I don't think they like what he's doing in Israel. Like, for something tells me, I honestly, because, I don't know if you know this, but Bethlehem is right now under Palestinian control.
yeah.
And that is wrong. That's wrong, right?
Why is it wrong? Can you give me more context?
Because Bethlehem, come on. If you want to go visit Bethlehem and you're a Christian, you stand a good chance of getting killed.
Actually, I have to disagree with that because one thing that I've learned is that here's the thing. For someone I know who went out there, right, all of the biblically sound places, maybe except for Jerusalem and other places, you don't have to go to Israel to see. So if you want to go see Bethlehem, Bethany, Hebron, all these places, the Dead Sea, on different sides, you go to Jordan. You don't go to Israel, you go to Jordan, right? And
Little Bethlehem.
It's I don't know exactly where it is, but
in Israel.
Yeah, but you said it's under Palestinian control, right?
Yeah. And if you are a Christian trying to go to Bethlehem, because like when I went to Bethlehem, it was under Israeli control. Right. But that's when they blew us up in that cafe. Well, then it blew.
What?
Yeah, right across the street, dude. I was pro-Palestinian until they blew up that cafe right across the street from us. And that, like, I had no respect for those dudes with the curly hair, but then I saw what they did, and I was like, oh, now I get why they are like shitheads, because they're the ones that scrape the blood off the stones, and like, it's just like, I still don't understand it, but they had all of anyway, it doesn't matter, but like, they have their place. But I don't think those Jews are different than the other Jews that are like Woody Allen or Weinstein and all these others. So it's crazy. So so Bethlehem was under, it was because like, if you really wanted to go to like, because we went to that river where I guess John the Baptist was baptizing people or something like that. I mean, I honestly don't know anything about the Bible or its geography, but that's in Israel, I believe.
Right.
And because, it was somewhere in the Middle East. And because I remember, like, the only thing I really remember about that was, like, they had, like, these 2-liter things. And then there was, like, this water's fresh. You can drink it. And they were drinking it straight. Like, the dudes are drinking it. And they go, if you're smart, you take this back and sell holy water. And then they were like, hey, man, we could really do a business in America, sell it to the Christians because they believe it's holy water and holy dirt. I'm like, that's pretty much it's true. But anyway, but you can't do that now, because it's under Palestinian control. So whatever that river was, or
Jordan River, is it the Euphrates, the Jordan River? I don't know. It's got to be.
No, but it's under Israeli control now. Where because they had but even back then the Asians were the ones. Like, there was busloads of Asians just getting dunked in that water. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. No, because dude, Israel was a trip. And I mean, I've been there so many times, but it's just a trippy place to go. Like the only time it was violent was like in the early 90s, but then it's calmed down a lot. And I is it because Palestinians have more control over it? I don't know. But I think giving up Bethlehem was a mistake because I think the Christians that were living there are already dead. And it's very hard to get to that church or that place where they say Jesus was born or something like that. And I honestly don't know if he was born. Was he born in Bethlehem? I have no idea.
No, he was. That's right.
Yeah. But that's like, I honestly don't know. But that's what happened. So but anyway, that's neither here. I don't want to get into that. The point was this. The Jewish people, not all of them, but like the American Jewish people who are anti-Christian but aren't open about it are the ones that keep not just voting, but they keep what's the word? Because I want to use my words carefully, but they're the ones, because I don't want to say ghetto stuff. The Jewish people, the Jewish leadership, and I'll use Ben Shapiro as an example. He's the one that keeps pushing out that agenda that Black people don't want a good education, or that Jim Crow was only in certain spots, and that what Reagan did, forcing the busing, was a bad thing because Blacks didn't want it. Black schools are being shut down, all of these things. But here's the thing. There were no Black schools in the 60s and 70s. It was segregated. It was forced segregation by the federal government. When Oliver Brown wanted to go to a better school, it's the exact same thing when that mother in Chicago used her dad's address to go to a better school. That woman did 18 months in jail for doing that. It's the exact same thing. Not every Black person wants a great education. That's true for everybody. Not every Asian person wants to be a math major and an engineer. It's false. But to say that, to allow people choices to go to the schools they want to go to, is wrong. And that's what the Jewish people ultimately are saying, the lobbyists. Because I don't even know what a Zionist mean, but you would think in my position I would know these terms.
You're a pro political state of Israel. You believe that Israel has a right to exist politically in that space that it's been given in the Middle East.
Well, I believe they have a right to exist. I just don't believe they have a right to tell me what to do. You know what I mean?
There you go.
But it's the truth. I mean, because that's the thing. It's like, why would anybody dictate to me what and how I should think is beyond me? But that's what makes Christianity so great, because it's not for the majority. It's for the minority thought. But given an option, most people will choose to be Christian with the Christian philosophy. Why? Because you want to be left alone. You don't want to be a cheerleader saying, oh yeah, I give to charity. You know what I mean? It's not, look, Christian people in theory are just humble people not seeking the spotlight. It's just, they want to be left alone, worship the way they worship, and be charitable the way they're charitable. Because that's my experience with Christian people. The good ones, not the shitty ones, but they're always like that. You know what I mean? They do what they do for whatever reason that they do it, but it's usually driven by Christianity. That's what drives it. So the thing is like this: Kamala Harris was right on some aspects, but because she believes in a bastardization of Christianity, she is going to do, as a Black person, the exact same thing that the whites did to her and all Blacks, but she wants to do the same to all whites. Now it's the Black people's turn to put you under our thumb. That's what she's trying to advocate.
She comes from Oakland, man. That's just how they are. Like, no, I'm serious. It's like, it's not. Yeah. But it's not Christian. It's not. Okay, so here's the thing. It's not real Christianity, because it's not about moving forward and fixing problems and forgiveness. Yeah, because here's the thing. Christians don't seek retribution the way other faiths do. It's forgiveness, right? But when you say, we're going to do to you what you did to us, that is not Christ-like.
That's what she did to Biden.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So when people say, oh, Christian, like, no, there's nothing Christian about that.
No, but I'm telling you now, I think that is Judeo-Christianity. Because
Judeo-Christian, it's not Christianity. In fact, someone even in my comments on my YouTube videos have said, dude, you're not, and I agree with them. They corrected me. I'm like, I am going to stop saying Judeo-Christian values, because there's no such thing.
Well, no, no, there are such things.
No such thing when it comes to the Christianity that I know.
No. See, but Judeo-Christian morals and ethics are evil. That's the stuff that starts segregation. That's the stuff that creates poverty and disparity between the races. That's what Judeo-Christian is. It's Martin Luther King.
Right.
Seriously, he was influenced by a lot of Jewish people who had him under his thumb for being gay. I'm not kidding you. I mean, that's a theory, but the only thing I know for sure, he was traveling a lot with Baynard Ruskin, and he was an alcoholic, or he drank a lot for fun. So if you're drunk, hanging out with the gay dude, doing God knows what, and the Jews got you under your thumb, I bet you money he dabbled in gay stuff. And that's why he was forced to do what he did. But anyway, long story short, he was a Judeo-Christian. He was. I know, without a doubt. Martin Luther King was a Judeo-Christian, but he was pretending to be a Baptist minister. He was. Nobody knew it. Nobody knew, because how can they know? There wasn't paparazzi. There was none of that stuff. Did anyone even really know Baynard Ruskin was a gay man? They know now, because now they go, oh, he was a great gay civil rights leader. If you Google Baynard Ruskin, now he was a great gay civil rights leader. But back in the 60s, nobody knew he was gay. And that was a secret. But, who knows? But anyway, so going back to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, it goes, see, Kamala Harris is actually making a case to why reparations was needed, because even though there was a Civil Rights Act and Oliver Brown, it wasn't implemented. It was fought tooth and nail by everybody because they took it away.
Right.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 took it away. And, she had to have been bused like in 1980. Because like when Reagan, that was one of Reagan's first things to do, was nationalize the busing system. So everybody in the States had to be bused. So she was 82, class of 82. Yeah, she was class of 82. So she got bused, and that was a Reagan program, and that was good. See, like, I honestly believe like Reagan was probably like a Christian dude. You know what I mean? Like, but one of those born agains. He might not have been a Christian his whole life, but then, because he was an actor partying, and then he's woke up one day and said, you know what, this ain't right.
Yeah.
But that's what he did.
That's pretty accurate. Yeah, it's pretty accurate.
No, I don't know anything really about his, but because where else do you get that? And he was incredibly honest about what happened with the Iran-Contra thing, because he was like, he literally blew the whistle on George Bush, Herbert Walker.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, George, Bush Sr. He blew the whistle on him. He was the one, Bush was the one that was behind all of this, selling, the Iran-Contra scandal. He was. But Reagan was open about it. He blew the whistle on everybody. He was like, hey, look, I'm telling you now, Reagan was almost assassinated. You know what I mean? Over stuff like that. I just, something tells me that just watching Reagan's actions and his fearlessness for blowing the whistle and things like that just makes me believe that he was really, really like a real Christian dude, because he wasn't afraid. And they try to kill him twice. And look at him. He was a great man.
No, absolutely.
And now people are trying to bastardize his legacy, because if you listen to like the Jewish leadership, like Ben Shapiro, every single person, specifically the Jewish people who are conservatives, they will all say busing was a bad idea. But why is it a bad idea? Why? Why is it a bad idea? Well, because it creates white flight. That'll be one of their arguments. White flight. No, white flight came about because Asians were also part of the desegregation process, and they dominated every single white person from what I know, in the South Bay. They controlled Cupertino. Everybody left because why? The Asians took it over. Because once Asians, like Vietnamese, Chinese, whatever, they, in the 70s and the 60s, they didn't have prominence. They didn't. Mm-hmm. So they were also bused. It wasn't just blacks, but everybody was bused. The poor kids were bused to better neighborhoods. Asians took advantage of that opportunity. They did. They just did. Asian people took advantage of it. They went to a good school, but I know more about the South Bay. But specifically, Asians dominated, and I mean dominated Cupertino. And you know, and that was an all-white area. But by the 80s, early 90s, every single white person left because the Asian people started getting jobs at Apple, because Apple's in Cupertino. And obviously, you went to Monte Vista or, you know, Cupertino High. You went to a good school. A lot of them got into Stanford, Berkeley, and then they graduated. And everybody started getting jobs at Apple. Why? Because they were engineers and math majors. They took advantage of it. They were not given that opportunity.
Right.
So, you know, when the Jewish leadership, like Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, they talk crazy about things like that. It's like, no, segregation is always bad. Forced segregation was the only way to get things done. And you know, it didn't destroy anybody. It didn't destroy, you know, towns, or, you know, schools weren't shutting down. It just didn't happen. In fact, you would be hard pressed to, if it wasn't for desegregation and forced busing, I don't think Silicon Valley would have ever existed. Seriously, because if it wasn't for the Asian people behind it, because, you know, it's a joke. This reminds me of a joke. You know, Bill Burr. Yeah, Bill Burr.
I love Bill Burr. He's so funny.
Yeah, no, but he was saying, like, he goes, I don't buy into the baloney of Steve Jobs. You know, Steve Jobs didn't invent anything. He wasn't the one doing the soldering or the possible welding. He, you know,
there's some truth to that.
He goes, I want my music collection in this box. And then a whole bunch of people were in there making it for him. Those people were the Asians. It wasn't
Wozniak. Oh, no, he left Apple a long time ago.
Yeah, no, but that's my point. Yeah. You know, because, like, I'm telling you now, the people who come up with the ideas aren't the people who figure out the math to get it done.
Right. You just had a cool idea. Like, what if this was a thing? I don't know the algorithm behind it, but you do. Yeah. And you're like, okay, I'll do it. I'll work it through, make it look nice. Just like Asian guy be like, I do math in my head.
Yeah, no, but it's how it works. But you know, like Yahoo's founder was an Asian dude, right? Wasn't he Asian?
I don't know.
Yeah, I forget his name, but either way. But my point is, without the Asian people being as successful as they were in academics in the South Bay, especially like in Palo Alto, Cupertino, they dominated. We would have none of this stuff. And then my question to, like, guys, you know, conservatives like Shapiro or Mark Levin or whoever, how can you fault Asian people for that? You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just because blacks didn't take advantage of something doesn't mean that it was totally bad. It was needed because it wasn't just blacks that were being suppressed. Everybody was being suppressed.
Right.
If you weren't white, and that's including Latin people were white unless you're a black Latin person. So if you were white, you automatically had status quo. It was just how it was. How were the Asians going to come up? How are the blacks going to come up? Well, you had to give them access to a better school. Because trust me, when I was going to school, like the whites, like my school had like 1,600 students. There must have been like 30 white people in that school. Out of 1,600 people, 30 white people. Everybody else is black, Samoan, or Asian, like Vietnamese, Chinese, no Japanese, a few Koreans and Filipino. That was it. And come on. Those Asian people went to school fearing for their lives all the time. Why? Because, you know, they didn't know if they were going to be a victim of some kind of random act of violence from all those thugs. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you know, and obviously there was a lot of cholos. And so, you know what I mean? So everybody was always fighting, and it's just, come on. The school system is a mess. To this day, it's still a mess. But it's only a mess in progressive cities.
Right.
And the thing is, these conservatives, especially, I mean, because, like, who's leading the conservative movement? It's not the Christians. It's just not. The greatest thinkers are all Jewish, whether it's Savage, whether it's Levin, whether it's Shapiro. The most popular people are all Jewish. It's just how it works. Mm-hmm. And then everybody's pushing this Judeo-Christianity, but it's not real. And it's really goes against the Old Testament. And I know it goes against the New Testament, even though I haven't read it. But, and that's the thing. And that's what I got away from those debates yesterday was, I'm like, holy crap. She brought it up. I'll say something off the air, but it's by no coincidence. I find it hard to believe that she used that tactic because nobody knows about these things. Nobody. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, because it's amazing that she even brought it up. And, I tip my hat to her, but she's still an evil person because like I said, she's going to use that to try to enslave white people. That's her end game. Her end game is to enslave white people. That's what she wants. And she can justify it by saying, oh, it happened to us, so it's going to happen to you.
I know. And that's the thing. She's not just a Democrat and she's not just a progressive with these ideas. She's a social justice warrior, which means it's not enough to have the solution. You want retribution. And that's why it's unfortunate, but it's the furthest thing from what we would look for in a president, because that's not what a president needs to bring in, which is the prejudice and bias. And by the way, Kamala Harris does not experience the same kind of black prejudice, discrimination, I would not think, as say, a black guy on the streets. Come on, she's half Indian. Like,
no, trust me, she didn't go through shit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, where is this coming from? But it's what people from Oakland do. That's what they do.
When she grew up look, Oakland was a black city. It was 50% black at one time. Like when we're coming up, it was like 50% black. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't. It wasn't like, because where it was bad for blacks? It was bad for blacks in San Francisco. And, they wanted everybody in Oakland, and it was bad for blacks in the South Bay. But it wasn't bad for blacks in Oakland because it was majority blacks. And everybody got along. And I don't know. It was just a thing. It was like this whole thing, like people love to rewrite history. And, it was, if you're in San Francisco and you're black, to this day, it still sucks to be black in San Francisco. Not so much in Oakland. Although the shootings and killings happen in Oakland, but it's mostly black on black crime. It's not like, that's why I don't go to the East Bay. I don't want to get shot in an accident. But it's the truth.
I lived in the East Bay for 6 years. I was fine.
Yeah, because you're not black. Black on black crime was a real thing, man. I'm not kidding. Most blacks get shot by other blacks. They're not going to get shot by no Chinese or some cop. They're going to get shot by black dudes. Fuck that. That's why I don't want to. I hate the East Bay. I don't like going to black towns because again, only in Georgia would I feel safe.
Really?
But other than that,
wow.
You go to black people love fighting other black people. It's just what they do. It's like, don't be fighting with, I ain't got no beef with you. It's just like, I don't even know you. No, and this happened. Weren't you locked up? It was like, nah, I was never locked up. No, I know. And I'm thinking, you don't know. Oh man, you don't even know. Like, people are crazy. It's like, what's even more amazing? How, no, but there's this thing. I think this is just blacks, but blacks will always say, like, all Asians look alike. That's what they say, right? But to blacks, I think all blacks must all look alike because, you know what I mean? Like, they're always getting confused with me with some other dude that they knew that, and I wronged them. I'm like, dude, I never even been to that part of town, or I don't know you.
But that's funny because you say that, right? And that aspect of it being applied to Asians is really funny, but black people mistake each other more often with that actual sentiment than Asians do, because they're always just like, dude, I don't know you from anywhere. I ain't never, and the thing is, they won't say like, I don't know you, and they'll actually go to lengths and say, I don't know you from anywhere. I ain't even been to Jersey in months. Like, it's just,
no, but it's the, dude, I'm telling you, black on black crime, like, people try to ignore it, but I hate going to black areas. Fuck
Oh.
that. Because they're gonna mistake me. You're that light-skinned brother. I'm like, no. I'm like,
You don't understand. I am not who you think I am.
Yeah, don't try to pretend. Don't change your voice. I'm like, nah, I really speak this way.
That's right. I gotta say it again. The first time I ever talked to you, on the phone, I thought you were a white dude. So I was just like, wait, this is like.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. No, but it's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like everybody. It's yeah. It's not like I said before. Blacks, if you listen to a guy from the Dominican Republic, you would have no idea he's black, because you would think he's just any other dude speaking Spanish, any white guy speaking Spanish. They all speak the same. It's not like, or black people from Jamaica, they don't sound like some hillbilly black. You know what I mean? But again, hillbillies sound like black people. Like if you listen to a hillbilly speak, you would think they were black, but they're not. But I don't know, like for some odd reason, Ebonics got confused with hillbilly language.
Well, so here's the thing, though. Whenever you talk, people say talking Ebonics, right? This is the last thing I'll say about this, but people need to understand that it came from the concept of of Southern hillbillies. Like white people were called dumb, and this is actually very, very a big part of the South, with also how it pertained to slavery and everything, and how you had a lot of poor whites. Black people didn't have that. They got that from poor white people. That whole Ebonics did not come from black people. It came from hillbilly whites. And the reason why I know this is because Dr. Thomas Sowell outlines that in Black Rednecks and White Liberals. He says that the origin of the perception of things, when people say black people sound dumb, why are they talking in Ebonics? Like, I ain't going out with your broke butt, like all that kind of stuff. That's not actually how black people used to talk. They got that from hillbilly whites.
Yep. It's the
truth. When at the end of the Civil War, when there was a big influx of black people from the South going to the North for jobs, and the black people in the North, there was no segregation. They had jobs. They were doing well. That's why they didn't like them. They were afraid of these influx of these so-called they wouldn't assimilate well, because they got that from Southern hillbilly. I'm serious. That's the truth. People think Ebonics it doesn't come from black people, and it doesn't come from black people being more ghetto or anything. It came from because of the fact that you actually had far more poor white people.
Ebonics came out of Oakland. Seriously.
But I'm talking about the whole dumb
district
Southern type sounding. That's a white thing. That's a Southern.
No, but I'm not kidding you. The Oakland School Board, the Oakland School District, they literally got paid by the federal government for the Ebonics bullshit. They got I think they got like a $2 million grant.
What?
They got $2 million for that. And that's why I'm thinking, I wrote this article a long time ago. I wish I found it, but everybody was all pissed off because I called him like Dr. Zayas from Planet of the Apes, But it's the truth. It's like, what the fuck are they talking about? And that's why I'm surprised about Thomas Sowell writing that. Because I'm thinking, because a lot of people don't want to say shit like that. I know I'd say shit like that because I was crazy. But that's the truth. Dude, they literally said, because we come from the Niger, Congo area, that we can articulate certain things because it's a genetic thing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking that was the most insanest thing I've ever heard. But they got $2 million for it.
That's the truth.
And I was like, oh, man. So I went to those people. But yeah, I know it's already 1 o'clock.
I got to get going. But I appreciate you guys tuning in here. We'll definitely have to continue this dialogue, Professor Dreg, and jump into it more as these presidential debates develop, because we're actually going to see more and more of people's true colors. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you all soon.